I've written down 60 things you can do in Crucible to get better at PvP. Today you're going to learn 25 of them covering movement techniques, radar tricks, aiming methods, and more. At the end of the video, you're going to see where to find the other 40 tips, and I guarantee you will boost your KD after trying these out, so let's jump in with number 1. Shoulder peeking is something you can do to burn your opponent's sniper ammo. A perfect example is when you're playing trials on dead cliffs. You can come over here, and the intent is not to strafe out too far and show your head, because then you'll get domed, but to actually peek just a little bit, left, right, and what you'll find happens is the opposing sniper tends to go for that shot anyways, even though they can't hit you in the head. I learned this from a guy named Gold Eagle, and I cannot believe how often I've burnt the entire enemy team's sniper ammo. Number 2 is angle management, which is a huge topic, and I've already covered it in depth on the channel before, but there are two main concepts I want to point out. When you're holding a lane, do it from a distance. Here's a top-down view of the Dead Cliffs map. The bottom circle is someone close to the corner, while the top circle is someone far away. The shading is what they can see, and you'll notice how early the blue guy up top has an advantage due to their vision and how angles work. In-game, it looks like this, and to make matters worse, Destiny's camera is actually oriented on the left side, so I can easily see Mun here and snipe him before he even knows I'm there. Long story short, if you're able to choose what side, you should peek to the left and don't hold angles up close to a corner. Tip number 3 is about movement, and in my first two videos I covered Hunter and Warlock, but today we're going to talk about Titans. The first I want to mention is regarding the jump. I tend to recommend strafe lift for general play, especially if you're new to the game or you're not very comfortable on Titan, but I will admit, once you get really good at Titan, and especially if you're on mouse and keyboard, you can actually Titan skate really well if you run catapult lift. What I do is I bind the secondary jump to my scroll wheel, and with low enough mobility, every time that catapult lift goes off with every tick of the scroll wheel, you'll actually get all of the acceleration without it kind of like shoving you up into the sky. The result of this is really quick map movement, so here's a side-by-side of me using the catapult Titan skating with my mouse wheel versus the next one, which is just sprinting, and then thirdly is like a strafe lift where you're kind of a mix of trying to use the mouse wheel as well as just gliding. You can see how much faster the former is. Now the second little trick I want to show people is for behemoth users. If you're sprinting and you start the cryoclasm slide, what you want to do is actually cancel your sprint during the slide animation and then start Titan skating as soon as you come out of it. Here's some footage showing the differences, whereas in one case you might come out of the slide, start sprinting, and then try and jump at somebody, versus sort of bursting straight out of that slide with momentum into a bit of a Titan skate. Tip number 4 is the blame game. I still to this day constantly watch and hear people blame the game for their downfall. I get it, sometimes D2 can be particularly frustrating with the cheese and the way people play, but I've always tried to live by one particular concept. If there is someone out there who's better than me playing the exact same game, then it's my fault. If I catch myself starting to tilt or blaming the game, I'll just literally ask myself, would Walla have really died or lost that match in trials? Like, what would he have done differently that could have won him that game? I get that there's some people with absolute raw talent, especially mechanically, but usually it's their decision making, so it's really on me. And the more that you learn from your own mistakes rather than blame the game, you'll actually find you're dying less and less to the cheese because you're just getting better. Tip number 5 is the mirror method. If you feel your team chemistry isn't working, consciously try to adapt your playstyle to theirs. A prime example is how I've actually had to learn how to play differently with Shadow Destiny. He's one of the most insane snipers I've ever played with, but our styles are incredibly different. I tend to want to cripple my opponents with extremely heavy aggression, keeping them on their heels, but Shadow is almost always used to just getting a pick early and then playing the 3v2. My style only works if all three of us rush in, but it's very high risk. His style is very safe, and he's the better player, so I've actually learned to just play differently in order to be a more effective teammate. The same mindset applies to freelance trials. Hold your blueberries' hands even if you think they're going the wrong way. That's still better than trading in a 1v3, which we're going to talk about a little bit more later. Tip number 6, next time you're playing PvP, I want you to call out loud the name and character of the player with their weapon. It can be Titan with the Shappy, it can be Dawnblade with the Messenger, or Spectral Sniper who has wall hacks because of that subclass, right? Saying it out loud will actually prep your brain for later engagements. You'll subconsciously pick up on their character skin and actually speed up your reaction time towards better decision making. Tip number 7 is something called peppering. It's an effective way to reset your opponent's recovery timer. Let's just say you've damaged someone and they're running away. You go around the corner and you just shotgun them from really far and you only deal like 4 damage. Someone with 10 recovery who has their cooldown interrupted like 1 or 2 seconds later can effectively have 0 recovery within that engagement. And this brings me to tip number 8, disengagement. There's nothing more frustrating than a slippery opponent who is effective at getting away. And no, I'm not just talking about Wormhusk. Some people are just so good at staying alive. I've covered disengagement on its own in a video as well, but I do want to quickly mention it. Go into 6s and get yourself into tough situations on purpose with the full intent of just escaping. I'm not kidding, just jump into like 2 matches a day where you're hopping into engagements or situations where you're not trying to get kills. All you're trying to do is escape or survive. What happens is you actually develop a lot of those skills, which then subconsciously happen during your future gunfights where you need it to act almost like muscle memory. Tip number 9 is a very simple mechanic to bait people. In one of my other tip videos, I showed how you can fake sliding towards a Titan barricade and really catch your opponent off guard. Well, this is the same concept, but with radar manipulation. If you know someone's around a corner, you can pretend you're going to slide around that corner and shoot them, but actually just backpedal before you even get there. You'd be surprised how often they slide out thinking you're going to be 1 foot from their face when you're actually not anymore, and they'll either miss their melee, miss their shotgun shot, and you'll be way more prepared and win that fight. Next up is the ability bait. On the same vein, you can also do this to burn your opponent's abilities. The new DLC has been out for a few weeks, but I still see people wasting their abilities, so this can be very advantageous. Do something that invites them throwing their grenades, and because you're intending on them throwing them, you'll be fine. It's crazy how many months and months I've played Dead Cliffs on trials, and simply putting a barricade here would result in like 2 or 3 grenades getting thrown. Number 11 is just to remind you that everyone has their off days. If the game ain't working for you, just set it down and come back later. As someone who's naturally analytical, which I'm sure you know if you've seen any of my other videos, I have this tendency to overthink everything, especially my bad days. Like I'll look for mistakes so deeply, and when in reality, I could just run that scenario 100 times over on a different day, and I bet you it would be a different story. My point is that VOD reviews are good, but I've gone down the rabbit hole before, and it really didn't result in anything when I just overanalyze something so much. It's okay to just chill and come back another day, but I will mention one thing. Check how much sleep you've had. I really want you to listen to this clip from Matthew Walker, a notable professor of neuroscience who talks about the effects of sleep on our ability to perform.
And practice does not make perfect. Practice with a night of sleep is what makes perfect, because you come back the next day and you're 20 to 30% better in terms of your skilled performance than where you were at the end of your practice session the day before. Sleep is the greatest legal performance enhancing drug that most people are probably neglecting in sport.
Next up is something I developed a while back, which was how to stay calm in chaotic up-close moments. This is probably one of the biggest game changers for me to improve, and it's kind of hard to explain. For example, when there's a ton of commotion on my screen, I literally have the time to even tell myself in my head just to relax and look for the target. I know that sounds crazy. I'm not trying to make it sound like some stupid space magic thing. All I did is I practiced one thing over and over. Instead of moving my mouse frantically looking for the target all over the place, like whipping my mouse around, I would instead just try and take a step back, almost as if I'm looking at the monitor in third person, if that makes sense. You know how you can just lose focus with your eyes sometimes, and it feels like you're seeing everything in peripheral vision, like you're not focused on one particular thing? That's the best way I can describe it. Forgetting about all the commotion that's moving around on the screen, I'm just sort of looking at the monitor, waiting for the opponent to pop up in my FOV. I've found that when I use this technique, I have way faster reaction times, because it's like I notice instantly when the opponent is on my screen, and then I let my hand-eye coordination just react to the target. Tip number 13 is kind of along the same vein, and it's about how you should be focusing on a target, not your crosshair. You might think like, duh, I do that. I'm looking at my target when I shoot them, but I actually bet you that you aren't if you're here to try and improve. Pay very real attention to this fact. In Destiny, if you're in a gunfight with an opponent, you shouldn't even be looking at where your reticle is, just focus on your opponent. Let the time and experience with the weapon figure out the recoil and all of that. If you just focus on your exact opponent and where they're going, your crosshair will follow over time. I even find myself shooting ahead of my targets because I sometimes focus on their momentum, which ends up looking like I pre-fired their strafe for the win. While we're on the same topic, I might as well bring up aim training for tip number 14. Kovacs on PC has truly built and supported my ability to focus on the target, and in particular remain calm like I was talking about a moment ago. For whatever reason, this game gave me the biggest boost to my ability to just see my target and only my target, like as if I'm erasing all the other crap, grenade, commotion, whatever's going on the screen. I know a lot of people talk about how you need to train your aim in game, and that's totally true, but the fact is that if I spend 30 minutes in an aim trainer, that's almost like 4 hours of aim training with all the loading and matchmaking that you get with Destiny. For my console folks, I did hear that there's one called Arcade Aim Trainer. I haven't tried it obviously because I'm on PC, but I will point out this tweet from Aim Labs. They're actually making one, so keep your eyes open for that. Okay, this next one is about lane limiting. Now, as I'm talking about this, Bannerfall was just on trials, and that map exposes bad habits like to an extreme amount. I feel as though you go anywhere on that map and you can get shot from an infinite amount of lanes. Slicing the pie is an FPS term that you may have heard about. It's basically a concept where you slowly peek one lane at a time, clearing them before going out. This is obviously pretty tough in a fast flying game like Destiny, so my recommendation for limiting lanes is learning what spots on a map will actually do it for you. Going onto Mohawk on this little ledge right here on Bannerfall can actually block more lanes than you think. I can peek up top and shoot him. I can also peek the guy in the middle and shoot him, but I can block the ladder respectively. Tip number 16 is a rule that I heard from my friend Brave that Shadow ended up making an incredible video on. The main takeaway from it is that you should always lane next to cover. Maybe you've heard that before, and he basically says you need to have 40% of your screen covered up with cover, and the other 60% is sort of what you can use to shoot people within your lane. Doing this not only promotes easy peek shooting, but it increases your survivability dramatically. Ask yourself next time if you're going to slide out from a corner, if I'm out in the open and I start losing the fight, will I even be able to get back? Or am I better off applying the 40-60 rule here so that if I do start losing, I can definitely get back? Tip number 17 is to shake up your strafe game. So many people just go left, right, or AD, AD. Throw in a crouch sometimes. Stop the straight back and forth sometimes. Maybe you can go left, right, left, or left, right. Most good players are expecting that AD, AD pattern, so when you do something different, they do tend to miss. Admittedly, Destiny's aim assist is pretty strong, so sometimes you can just sit still or crouch only and focus on hitting your own shots to win the fight, but either way, this is something you need to implement into your game. Tip number 18 actually ties back to what I was talking about with lane limiting. I mentioned how you could use Mohawk in the middle of Bannerfall to kind of block one lane while you shoot the other. Well, again, just use your surroundings. Go and learn how to use objects to temporarily block certain lanes. Let's say I'm in middle and I slide through these doorways into the enemy spawn. I'm in a fight with someone, but then they back off. So then what I can do is actually slide close to this box, fight the guy to my right, which probably isn't a great idea if I'm low health, but the point of this situation is that you can expose yourself as long as you use a surrounding to keep limiting your lanes. Tip number 19 is to stop baiting your teammates. I think it was number 5 where I mentioned the mirror method and how you should go with your blueberry teammate even if you think it's the wrong route. Well, I want to look at a hypothetical situation. Let's just say your teammate is going to go out and do X play, like no matter what. For the sake of argument, let's also say that this is the wrong play for sure. Like we just know that. If you don't join them, then they're going to die because we just finished saying it was the wrong play. So obviously they're not going to stand a chance alone. Well, now it's a 3v2 and you've lost anyway if your opponents are remotely decent. If we rerun that scenario and this time you decide to go in with them, you'll at least give it a fighting chance. If it doesn't work, well then the outcome is the same, right? But if it does work, it's solely because you were with them instead of just baiting them on their own. Tip number 20 is probably better spent on a video of its own, so I think I'll just give a precursor for now, and if you want to know more, you can comment below. I try to split every single map into 3 sections, kind of like a pie chart, and then I read my radar and decide based on that. When you spawn up, you're in a position. If my teammates are taking up 1/3 and I head to the other third, chances are the spawn points for the opposing team is going to be in the last third. I know that sounds so elementary, but when I die, I typically ask myself, where was I or where was the enemy when he shot me? And then as soon as I spawn up, I check where the rest of my team is. And right from that moment, that's 2/3 out of the 3 that I know what's going on and can decide what third I need to go to. Third-party focus sort of has two parts, so let's actually call this 21A. Something I see very often when I'm reviewing our community gameplay in the Discord is someone being in a fight, then suddenly a second enemy comes around, otherwise known as a third party joining in, and for whatever reason, the person that I'm reviewing their VOD, they will just change targets. I don't know why I see this so often, but people seem to be abandoning their target before killing them just to switch to the third party or the extra person that comes onto the screen. In a lot of cases, when you're in an engagement, you need to just forget about whatever changes on your screen and make damn sure that you finish that engagement and you get that kill. Maybe you'll end up trading, but that's a lot better than dealing half damage to two people and then dying. This brings me to 21B, which would actually be committing to the trade. Sometimes you're in a situation where there's just no way out. It's like you know for sure you're gonna die, but you're gonna take someone with you to sort of hit that reset button. This is one on Javelin that happens all the time where you slide out, you're in a fight, and then you're weak behind these boxes and people are pushing you. Get ready, and the whole objective is just to trade, so you go 1-for-1. Now on the topic of trading, I feel like this tip, number 22, is a big one that everyone needs to hear. I don't know about you, but the amount of times my Titan brain just goes for the million melees instead of shooting my damn shotgun is ridiculous. Ask yourself how many times you've double meleeed someone or you just spammed the melee button. Let's say you slide around a corner for the shotgun melee and you missed your shotgun shot, so your first melee hits them, right? It does 100 damage. Well, what people most often do is just keep spamming that melee button to try and get the second melee off. And what happens? You trade. You both die. So look on screen right here. This is a situation where we both try and double melee each other. And on the other half is a situation where I decide to actually shoot my shotgun instead of the second melee. Promise me you will start doing this. After you hit someone with a melee, if they are not dead, do not melee a second time. Just shoot your weapon and I promise you'll be happy. Okay, next tip is on sensitivity. For console folks, I'm just going to throw it out there. I think most of the top players use 4 to 6, but actually I'm already going to eat my words. Just go watch Shadow's video on like all the crazy sensitivity options. But for this right now, I just want to mention for people on PC using a mouse, I would like to point out eDPI. Take your mouse's DPI and multiply it by your in-game sense. Mine, for example, is 800 DPI multiplied by 5 in-game sensitivity, which is a total of 4,000 eDPI. Do that math for your situation, and if you're over 7,000, then please try lowering your sensitivity. Even if you just do it step by step over time, I promise you'll thank me later as long as you buy yourself a bigger mouse pad. All right, tip 24. This is for the new DLC regarding ability cooldowns. If you're going to use your grenade or an ability, just use them with a plan. Far too often, I see people burn their grenade with no action item. Let's say I'm on Bannerfall again, because I know we were just playing Trials, and I know there's someone in the corner there because of my radar, so I throw a spike grenade back there to try and hit them with it, but then I just decide to challenge middle because I'm kind of near Mohawk and I'm worried about getting shot from behind. Well, press the pause button right there. Why did I even throw my grenade? Try to use your abilities with a game plan. If I'm going to throw a grenade back there, it either has to be to buy myself time because I think they're about to kill me and I need them to back off, or the fact that I have a plan to legitimately follow up and kill them after if it hits. Like, you almost need to preemptively act as if you're expecting it to do damage. Now, the last tip today is a bit of an ego one. There's a lot of 50-50 lanes in Destiny's maps where even if you're incredible, it can go either way. The opening snipe on Bannerfall, again, using the same map as an example, the top ledge, right? People always go there and you're really taking a 50-50 even if you're good. Endless Veil is another example with that opening lane right down the middle, right? People will ego challenge each other there with a sniper. If you watch Walla, for example, when he's playing a team that he knows isn't very good, then sure, he'll do it. But if he's playing people that are even remotely decent, he'll probably actually jump on this block just to get a different angle and like snipe them from up in the air. But the point is that he doesn't take the 50-50. All right, I think that wraps it up. I've actually decided to put the whole list of all the other 40-ish tips that I've done in my other two videos. They're right on screen right now. If you enjoyed this, click on my logo on screen, hit the subscribe button so you can see more, and then choose one of the videos that you want to watch next. Take care.